This talk just continues the previous talk on gravimetric analysis and also calculating weight percents and parts per million. And previous video we just finished off looking at question 1A from page 12 of Focus Area 3 booklet, and we calculated there was 75 parts per million was equivalent to 15 grams of lead in 200 litres. So what you should do now is try 1B and 1C on page 12 and just pause the video and we'll go for the answers to those after that. So for 1B, we've been told you've got 0.0001 milligrams of lead per 500 kilolitres, and just like before we can figure out the parts per million, we've got to make sure they're both in the same units. So 0.0001 milligrams per 500 kilolitres, first thing we do is change the milligrams to grams. We're replacing the milli with 1 times 10 to the minus 3, and we recognise that kilo is times 10 to the 3, so we've replaced them in. So now we've got 0.0001 by 10 to the minus 3 grams per 500 by 10 to the 3 litres. That can be written as now 1 by 10 to the minus 7 grams over 500,000 litres. The next thing to do is realise that 1 litre is a kilogram, so now we've got grams per kilogram, and then we can replace that kilo with by 10 to the 3, so now we've got grams per grams. 1 by 10 to the minus 7 grams over 500,000 by 10 to the 3 grams. To convert that to parts per million, that's 1 by 10 to the minus 7 divided by 500,000 by 10 to the 3, all by 10 to the 6, gives us 2 by 10 to the minus 10 parts per million. Question 1C, we've got 88 micrograms per 5 tonnes. Once again, converting units first, that's 88 by 10 to the minus 6 grams over 5,000 kilograms, because there's 1,000 kilograms in a tonne. That then converts to 88 by 10 to the minus 6 grams over 5,000 by 10 to the 3 grams, and putting that into the parts per million formula, we get 1.76 by 10 to the minus 5 parts per million. Looking at some other sorts of questions, sometimes we have to convert between units rather than finding out parts per million. We've got to convert between units, or we've got to convert parts per million into a different sort of unit. And on your experiment 18 sheet, it's a discussion, or sorry, in your compulsory questions, it's D number 1I, and you've been asked to convert 250 micrograms per litre into the units of milligrams per litre. And so we've got 250 micrograms per 1 litre. First thing we do is always change to standard units first if we need to. We've got to change the micrograms to milligrams. We don't have to change the litres, we're just looking at changing the top line. And before we try and change micrograms to milligrams, I always find it easy to change to the standard or base unit first, which is just grams. So I'm replacing the micro bit with times 10 to the minus 6. Next I've got to change it to milligrams though. So 250 by 10 to the minus 6 grams per litre, I've got to change that to milligrams. So I want to make this units now milligrams rather than grams, which means I'm actually adding in milli, and milli means 1 times 10 to the minus 3. Now the thing is, I'm trying to find what this ratio is in milligrams per litre, which means I can't change the actual numbers. All I'm going to do is change the units. But by putting this milli in, I'm actually timesing by 1 by 10 to the minus 3. So because I can't change the number, that means I've also got to divide that number by 1 by 10 to the minus 3, which means that 250 by 10 to the minus 6 grams is the same as 250 by 10 to the minus 6 milligrams divided by 1 by 10 to the minus 3. And then what I can do is just figure out that ratio, and that turns out to be 0.25. So the answer, that 250 micrograms per litre, is the same as 0.25 milligrams per litre. As a bit of practice, see if you understand that, can you convert 0.25 micrograms per 10 kilograms into milligrams per gram? So have a go at that, pause the video, and then start it up when you've got an answer. Okay, looking at that, 0.25 micrograms per 10 kilograms. Once again, change them both to the base unit of grams, so replacing the micro with by 10 to the minus 6 and replacing the kilo with times 10 to the 3. So now we've got 0.25 by 10 to the minus 6 grams per 10 by 10 to the 3 grams. But now we've got to convert this top line into milligrams. And so to convert that top line to milligrams, once again, I'm putting this milli in, which is by 10 to the minus 3, so I've got to divide by 10 to the minus 3. So that becomes 0.25 by 10 to the minus 6 divided by 1.1 times 10 to the minus 3 milligrams. Do that in my calculator. I get that's equal to 2.5 by 10 to the minus 4 milligrams, all over 10 by 10 to the 3 grams. Figuring out this ratio then tells me that 0.25 micrograms per 10 kilograms is the same as 0.025 milligrams per grams. Another style of question on experiment 18, it's D number 2 part 3. you've been given 800 parts per million, and you've got to convert that to micrograms per kilogram. You need to remember that parts per million is the mass of a substance divided by the total mass times by a million. So in this case, the parts per million is 800, so 800 equals the mass per mass, and don't forget those masses in parts per million have to be the same units, times by a million, or the grams per grams is 800 on a million, just rearranging that equation, or gram per gram, it's 8 by 10 to the minus 4. So what that means is 800 parts per million is the same as 8 by 10 to the minus 4 grams for every gram. And now I've got it in grams per gram. All I've got to do is now convert those two things into the different units of micrograms and kilograms. So the top line I've got to convert that to micrograms. So if I'm putting a micro in, 8 by 10 to the minus 4 micrograms, I've got to divide by a micro. And on the bottom line, I'm putting a kilo in. So that means I've got to divide by a kilo. When I resolve these two fractions, that then becomes 800 micrograms divided by 1 by 10 to the minus 3 kilograms. 800 divided by 1 by 10 to the minus 3 is 800,000. So that tells me that 800 parts per million is the same as 800,000 micrograms per kilogram. As a bit of practice, see if you can convert 54 parts per million to nanograms per microgram. Have a go, pause the video while you're doing it, and then press play again when you're ready to look at the answer. Okay, so 54 parts per million, that's the same as 54 is equal to the grams per gram times a million, or the grams per gram equals 5.4 by 10 to the minus 5 once you rearrange, or that 54 parts per million is the same as 5.4 by 10 to the minus 5 grams per gram. Now we've got to convert the units. We've got to convert the top line grams to nanograms, so we add the nano in here, but also divide by nano. On the bottom of our fraction, we add the micro in here, but we've got to divide by micro, and that gives me 54,000 nanograms per 1 million micrograms, which is the same as 0.054 nanograms per microgram. So you should better go ahead now and solve all those ratio and converting units questions. And we can move on to the next video, which is all about atomic absorption spectroscopy.